Hello and welcome to my talk on legality of paying student athletes by Nick Berteau for Law 2150 at Appalachian State University. Today I'm going to talk to you guys about why morally student athletes deserve to be paid, but why the problems and the legal issues that come up with paying them hinder coming up with a plan to pay them, and why it'll take years before they will ever be compensated for what they bring into their respective schools and programs. So let's just start with Appalachian State, because that's the university we all attend. There's over 450 student athletes participating on 20 varsity sports teams at Appalachian State. And based on NCAA rules, they are given, for the sports that they have, 278.7 scholarships between men and women. And if you look at that chart to the right, based on a public four-year college, which is what Appalachian State is, the average is $9,139. So we're not going to use App State's tuition. We're going to use that average just so we can get all the schools for public schools. And if we use the average of public and private four-year colleges, it comes out to $16,048.50. And if we say all of them have 278.7 scholarships to use, they are all paying. So in our case, Appalachian State is paying $4.4 million in scholarships to all their student athletes. And with that, only a couple sports, and that is football and men's basketball, are actually profitable. And based on they're actually very profitable. Based on the new college football playoff, which started this year, actually, the first one just happened in January 2015. For a non-automatic qualifying conference, which the Sun Belt Conference is, Appalachian State's conference, the conference receives $75 million just from the playoff, and that's the split amongst its 11 member schools, giving each school over $6.8 million. So what do they do with all that money? Well, actually, it's used to fund other programs, used to go to equipment, used to go to facilities, a lot of things. We'll get back to that later. Moving on to other money stuff. The Yosef Club, just from fan base, alumnus, everything, raised over $3 million in 2014. So if you use $6.8 million from the college football playoff, $3 million from Yosef Club, that's $9.8 million from just those two programs, not including the NCAA basketball tournament, not including anything else Appalachian State gets. After the $4.4 million in scholarships, Appalachian State still has $5.4 million left over. What do they do with all that money? Well, some of it goes to recruiting, but that's not that much, which is only about $500,000 in recruiting. It still leaves $4.9 million. The $4.9 million is just an average of what they have left over after maybe their booster program and the college football playoff for a public university or a private university. That is just on average with 278.7 scholarships. Some recent events about paying college athletes and why it's up in the news and why it could be important is just college football playoff just came into fluctuation this year from the old BCS system. So now instead of one national championship game, they go to two. Well, they go to a two semifinal game and then a national championship game. So there's 3 games to determine the national championship, which creates huge amounts of revenue, huge amounts of TV deal, because there's 2 extra games to be watched, and it just creates a whole fluctuation of fans that weren't there before. But they're paying and they're watching because of the athletes, and they don't get paid. It kind of doesn't seem right, but we'll get into more of that later. So most Division I athletes actually do devote 40-plus hours per week, which is equal to overtime for most hourly workers on a normal job to their sport, and all of them do at least 30-plus. No matter what sport, but most of them are 40-plus hours. That means they're working just as hard as anybody else, and the fact that you would not pay them for those hours they're putting into practice, the hours they're putting into travel, on top of what they do for school, and you're asking them to work more hours, it doesn't seem right, and there is an argument there for why they deserve to be paid for those practice hours they put in. Thousands of former college athletes actually recently settled for a $40 million settlement with EA Sports and the NCAA licensing team for improperly using their likeness in video games from 2003 to 2013. This happened in 2000. This happened 2 years ago. A bunch of former players just sued the NCAA because they used their pictures, their likeness, their height, their weight, and stuff like that in video games. And the NCAA actually did not make a new football game this year because of it, and didn't know how they're going to do it, and they are not sure if they're going to continue the series NCAA football located there on the right. And another recent thing that happened is last year, almost a year ago, in March of 2014, the National Labor Relations Board in Chicago ruled that Northwestern football players are employees of the university and that they are able to unionize. What they are looking for is just stuff for concussions in case they get concussion playing for them. They're looking for health benefits, and they're looking for just a little stipend for some expense pay. Some legal issues that go on with this. Currently, college athletes are considered amateur athletes, and that is a model I'll get into in a little bit. Right now, NCAA rules state that athletes can't receive any compensations for their prowess on the field, any gifts, any money, anything free they cannot accept, because if it's for what they do on the field. What about those 40-hour weeks, the travel to games? They don't have time to get a job. How are they going to pay for other stuff if they can't get paid for what they're doing, what they're putting all their time into? People pay to watch them. Don't they deserve part of the profits? I think yes, but there is a problem, and that's the majority of athletic programs actually lose money. Most of them do. No matter how much they bring in from football and basketball, there's other sports. Like I said, App State has 20. There's 1,800 sports they have to pay for that don't make money by themselves. They use the money from football and basketball to fund themselves. So with so many athletes on so many teams, it's extremely difficult and unfair to find a way to pay them, and legally, and that everyone would find right and fair. It's just too hard, and we'll get to that right now. So scholars mainly talked about a lot of how the NCAA gets away with not paying them, and that's just under the current model of the NCAA considering them student athletes is under an athlete education system, in that they state that athletes are a huge part of the student body of a university, and that they can get just the scholarships but nothing else. And this allows the NCAA to get tax exemption status. They avoid worker compensation claims. They have vicarious liability, which allows them to just kind of erase all liability from themselves. Under this system, schools can only give scholarships that pay the cost of going to the school, and the NCAA permits athletes to work part-time to cover other expenses. And like we talked about, athletes are already putting in at least 30 or more hours, and most of them 40 or more hours a week on their practice, on tape, on film, on treatment for injuries, on a number of things for their sport. And it's kind of ridiculous you would ask them to work part-time. And some other legal stuff that goes on is a student athlete will lose all the eligibility once he signs with an agent, no matter if there's money involved, no matter if they're going to get drafted into the professional leagues. If they sign with an agent, they lose eligibility. And some current pay-for-play proposals, there's plenty of problems with them, and some of the stuff scholars talked about were that, like I said, the profitable sports are used to fund the unprofitable sports. You'd have to cut sports to be able to pay all athletes. You have to cut some sports so you don't have to fund them as much, and you have more money to pay athletes. And then some pay-for-play ideas were that you only pay players that play in a profitable sport, which would be football and men's basketball. And the problems with that is it would really conflict with Title IX, and you'd have to pay women because of Title IX. You have to treat them fairly in college athletics. So in conclusion, just from a morality standpoint, yes, it seems student athletes deserve to be paid. They put in time, they put in the effort. No one's here to say they don't work hard. Two sports bring in millions and millions of dollars for schools, but if you want to have other sports, and I definitely am not here to say we should take them away because they're just as important, but it's impossible if you want to keep them all to pay everybody on there. And the fact that most athletic departments lose money, it would be way too hard to pay everybody fairly and have everyone agree with the payment. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed the presentation.